Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live broadcast, Clinical Trial Prescription Services, Navigating Sourcing in an Ever-Changing World. I'm Melissa Maripodi, the Custom Content Editor of Applied Clinical Trials, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We are pleased to bring you this webcast presented by Applied Clinical Trials and sponsored by Myonex. I would like to share a statement from our sponsor. Myonex is a global complete clinical trial solutions provider. For over 30 years, we have been the leading global clinical trial supply company, and we have expanded our service portfolio to offer complete solutions around clinical trials for our partners. You might have known us as Myoderm, as we recently changed our name, but not our high-quality services as the complete clinical trial supply partner. We at Myonex add value to our clients by helping them always be prepared for what is next in their clinical trials. We have a few important announcements before we begin. This webcast is designed to be interactive, and we encourage you to ask questions during the event. You can submit questions by typing them in the Q&A box, which can be found on the right-hand side of your screen. You can enlarge the slide window by clicking on the small square icon in the upper right-hand corner of the slide window, or by hovering your mouse over the lower right-hand corner and dragging the window to the desired size. The slides will advance automatically during the event. If you have any technical problems viewing or hearing the presentation, just click on the question mark help widget in the dock at the bottom of your presentation window. I would now like to introduce our speakers for today. We are pleased to be joined by Andrew Gregoire and Tom Gregson. For more than 8 years, Andrew has played a key role in developing, optimizing, and continually improving Myonex's customer relationships. Clients count on him to know their needs, pain points, and opportunities almost before they do, and find unexpected ways to deliver exceptional service. Tom has been pivotal to Myonex's success over the past 7 years. As an experienced pharmaceutical service business development professional, he has a proven track record in delivering high-value services to the global pharmaceutical industry. He is customer-focused with a drive to learn and take on new responsibilities. Thank you both for joining us today. Tom, please get us started.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Tom Gregson. I am Senior Director of Business Development for Myonex. Firstly, on behalf of Andrew and the Myonex team, we wanted to thank the many of you for taking the time for joining this webcast today. A webcast on utilising a doctor's prescription for supplying drugs to patients for clinical trials. So just to reiterate the key learning objectives of the next 30 minutes or so, we will be focusing on how to reduce waste and save costs when sourcing for clinical trials through prescription services. Andrew will be providing an overview of our clinical trial prescription service in the US and Canada that's active today. We will outline the key benefits of a pharmacy dispensing process as a solution for decentralized trials, and we'll provide you with some real-life examples to help you think about how this might apply to your studies. So firstly, if you have not heard of Myonex, we just wanted to share a little bit about our company. As mentioned in the introduction, we are a global clinical supplies company of over 30 years with a number of distinct services. Global Drug Sourcing is our industry-leading comparator sourcing service, where we have a long-established network of manufacturers and wholesale partners for the traditional way of sponsors looking to acquire key medications for their trials. Clinical trial packaging and labeling. This is where we're providing storage and GMP manufacturing services, as well as end-to-end project management of IMP to clinical sites and patients. Similarly, our equipment and supply service helps sponsors acquire any of the other non-drug related items that they might need for their trials. And finally, patient services, which is a significantly growing area of our business, and this is the area that we will be focusing on today. We manage around 2,000 projects a year for 200 sponsors and have supported clinical supplies for over 5 million patients in our company history. So first of all, we wanted to touch on some of the trends that we are seeing in clinical trials and how we are adapting our strategy as a clinical supplies business to address these trends. So patient centricity. Sponsors are looking to adopt more effective and innovative ways to accelerate their drug launches to market. In general, sponsors are much more open, no longer view patients as subjects who generate data, but now more as collaborators as core to the overall success of a clinical trial. Decentralized trials and direct-to-patient models. So these services have been around for quite a while, but as I think you'd all agree, COVID has accelerated the adoption of this approach. Some of the largest global CROs, they've been adjusting their entire business models to fully support and integrate decentralized trials into their processes. Several of them we've seen acquiring home nursing companies and partnering with technologies to facilitate a more patient-centric model. From a supplies perspective, a major focus is on home deliveries and convenience for patients as part of their overall engagement in a clinical trial. Cost reduction and waste reduction, obviously a significant area of focus for sponsors. Costs associated with bringing a new drug to market are widely acknowledged. From a supplies perspective, especially in these open label oncology trials, where there's a huge amount of cost can be wound up in the comparator or the standard of care or the combination medication. We feel that the days of straight comparator purchase directly from a manufacturer with 30% overage are passing by, and sponsors are certainly looking for a much more efficient supply chain, more streamlined access to drugs via different mechanisms versus the traditional source, pack, label, and site distribution model. Shortened timelines. So here at MyNex, we are fortunate enough to be trusted by a wide range of sponsors, from small biotech companies through to large pharma. Some of our large pharma clients, a couple in particular, they have overall company-wide objectives to reduce clinical trial startup time by 50% per category over the next 2 years. So from a supplies perspective, this could mean getting away from a 3 to 4 month lead time on a source pack label at a CMO and consider alternative ways to provide medications via prescription real time. And Andrew will touch on project startup times as it relates to prescription services set up a little later. And finally, another trend we wanted to highlight is that some of the newer standard of care medications in the US and Canada have what's called limited distribution status. And this means they are only available via prescription and not available via traditional wholesale routes. And this means in some cases entire trial arms cannot be run unless there is a different mechanism to enhance our access. And this is where our clinical trial patient solutions have come into play. So in the next section, Andrew is going to cover an overview of clinical trial prescription process and the benefits of this type of service, and especially as it relates to supporting decentralized trials. Andrew.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, everyone. So great to be here today. After the presentation, we would love to hear from the audience on what other trends they might be seeing in, as it relates to clinical trials, or what other objectives their companies are prioritizing moving forward. As Tom mentioned, today we'll be discussing clinical trial prescription services and how it can serve as an effective and efficient solution to meet the demands of these current clinical trial trends. Before we dive into how CTRX works and how it meets the demands of the current trends, I feel it is important to cover, first of all, what is CTRX? CTRX is a prescription benefit card designed specifically for clinical trials. Those of you living in the U.S. may be more familiar with pharmacy benefit plans or programs than those of you living outside the U.S. For those of you living outside the U.S., I have to apologize. As you know, Americans like to make healthcare as complicated and as expensive as possible. I can say that because I'm from Minnesota, so I'm basically Canadian. So what is a pharmacy benefit plan or program? A pharmacy benefit plan is typically a component of most U.S. health insurance plans that are available through employers or purchased individually or available through Medicare, Medicaid type programs. The pharmacy benefit portion provides prescription drug coverage for its members. Plans may cover all or part of the costs of the drugs depending on the program and or the drug products. So basically how this works is a patient goes to the doctor writes them a prescription for a drug. That prescription gets sent to the designated pharmacy. The patient goes to the pharmacy, presents their insurance card that has the numbers for the CTRX or the prescription benefit plan. The pharmacy runs those numbers, provides the drugs to the patient, and the patient goes home and uses the drugs. Our card works exactly the same way. It provides full prescription drug coverage for your patients enrolled in your clinical trials at zero cost to the patient. CTRX can be used for any open label commercially available drug product in Canada or the US, and that can be classified as a non-IMP or an IMP. It can be used in conjunction with other global sourcing and distribution strategies for a comprehensive global solution. And it allows patients to get standard of care, combination, and rescue medication, as well as ancillary supplies directly from MyoNexus custom retail or specialty network. CTRX provides very flexible dispensing options to meet the demands of both traditional trials with clinical sites or can fully support a decentralized trial or direct-to-patient component of a trial. Those flexible dispensing options are patients can go to the local pharmacy to collect the drug or the products or medications that they need, or we can leverage a single central pharmacy or specialty pharmacy to ship or distribute the product directly to the clinical site or directly to the patient. Another flexible option is we can often utilize the clinical site's outpatient pharmacies to dispense the product directly for those patients. The benefits recognized from CTRX are very similar to the trends and sponsor objectives mentioned previously by Tom, along with a couple other benefits. The first one that gets a lot of attention is the cost savings. That cost savings is recognized in a number of different ways, the most impactful being no waste. It is not uncommon for trials to factor in 20, 30, sometimes 50% overage. Well, at the end of the trial, that overage becomes waste. And as we'll highlight a little bit later, that amount of waste can add up to tens of millions of dollars. Another benefit of CTRX is it allows for extremely fast study startup. We can start up a study in as little as 30 days in the US and 60 days in Canada. It is much faster than the traditional method where you may be looking at starting your trial 3 months, 6 months, or sometimes longer to begin the packaging and labeling activities. Aside from the initial budget, there is no additional planning or forecasting that is needed. You don't need to manage your next resupplies, you don't need to manage packaging and labeling runs, and then you also don't need to manage inventory. You don't have to worry about shelf life or expiry dating, managing first in, first out. It frees up your clinical supplies team to focus in on other aspects of the clinical trial. One of the main reasons we launched CTRX was for access to specialty drug products, those that fell under either the limited distribution or REMS designation. More and more of our clients were conducting clinical trials utilizing drug products that we could no longer source through traditional methods. With CTRX, we have access to every specialty drug product commercially available in the US and Canada. And last but not least, CTRX is extremely site and patient-centric. Sites no longer have to worry about sourcing hard-to-get drug products and waiting to be reimbursed by sponsors. They don't have to go through pharmacy benefit or prior authorizations and processing patients' insurance. And from a patient centricity side, not only do patients get their drugs at no out-of-pocket cost for themselves, it provides them with very flexible options to receive their medications, whether that be at their local pharmacy or delivered directly to the patient. Now that we know what CTRX is and its benefits, how does it work? The biggest takeaways here are that it's fast and easy to set up, tightly controlled, and provides great flexibility. The process falls into 3 easy steps. The first step, the trial design and implementation, is where we program all the clinical trial requirements. These consist of the formulary creation, pharmacy network setup, custom reporting and portal setup, CTRX card generation, and last but not least, site training. One of the most important aspects or parts of the setup is the creation of the formulary. This is where most of the controls lie within the program. It is important to note only drugs listed on the formulary will be covered under CTRX. This, combined with the need for a valid prescription, ensures that no abuse or fraudulent claims will be covered under the CTRX program, just in case the card ran it or fell into the wrong person's hand, or if the patients enrolled were trying to utilize or gain access to additional drug products. The drug formulary can consist of as many drug products or as few drug products as the protocol requires. Most of our trials have 1 or 2 drug products with a handful of NDC numbers, or there are a couple that can be as many as over 100 or more. The formulary can be as specific as a single NDC number, so specific to one manufacturer, one strength, one pack size, or it can be as broad as an entire therapeutic class. Further controls can be put in place around the frequency of refills based upon utilization rate, and we can put rules and controls in place for lost medication in case a patient loses their medication, their dog eats it, whatever reason may happen for having that product gone, or we can also put rules in place for vacation overage. So if the patient was going on vacation and needed additional supply, rules can be put in place to cover that. Next, we structure the pharmacy network to meet the prescription dispensing needs of each individual trial. This is where we determine if we'll be utilizing a central pharmacy or specialty pharmacy to ship directly to the clinical sites or directly to the patient, if we'll be leveraging the clinical site's outpatient pharmacies, or if we'll be allowing patients to go to the local pharmacy, part of our network of 65,000 plus retail pharmacies, or a combination of all. We set up clients with access to our online portal that houses all claims and data reporting information, as well as give you access to dashboards so that you have easy access to all your claims from all of your trials at the tip of your fingers. Lastly, we ensure that every site is thoroughly trained on the CTRX program to ensure that there are no challenges with enrolling patients or with patients receiving their medications on time. It is important to note that while CTRX is newer for clinical trials, it is not new to healthcare, and most clinical sites are familiar with pharmacy benefit programs and find it a seamless part of the enrollment process. After the implementation, sites begin enrolling patients. The investigators write the prescriptions, send it to the designated pharmacy. The medications are dispensed to the patient. The pharmacies run the prescription card. We reimburse the pharmacies promptly, and that cycle just continues until last patient, last dose. And at that point, we turn off all remaining cards, we close out the trial, and issue the final reporting and summary reports. Sounds pretty easy, right? Well, it is really that simple. Now that we've covered what CTRX is and how it works, Tom and I will share some real-life examples of trials that have benefited from CTRX. Tom?
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so this first example is all about access. So a scenario where the drug that a sponsor needs is not available to buy due to the limited distribution designation that we mentioned earlier. So in this example, this sponsor tried to acquire this drug directly from the manufacturer in the US a year earlier, but were told that, quote, there are other mechanisms in place for patients to receive this product. So in addition to that, they looked at the sites, and the clinical sites they were using were unable to source and supply. So the impact here was that the sponsor was conducting a 3-arm trial without enrolling a single patient to this particular treatment arm for a whole year. The solution was that we did a 30-day setup for the CTRX, which gives them access via one of our specialty pharmacy partners in our network. And so with a prescription, the drug was able to be shipped directly to the clinical site. This allows the sponsor to enroll patients into that 3rd trial arm and continue their trial. We see this type of scenario on quite a few different oncology medications. Andrew, anything to add to this one?
Yes, thank you. This particular drug product was a product called Adhifa, but to your point, we have seen additional programs with other tough-to-get drug products that may fall under the REMS designation or limited distribution. Those can include, Pomalyst or Venclexta. It is also important to note that a solution that many sponsors have deployed in the past to gain access to this is to, have the sites source the drug products, and then they reimburse the sites directly. That model, while it may work, is typically much more expensive than the CTRX route because we have pre-negotiated pharmacy rates. Those rates that are typically 10 to 20% less than what the sites would be charging you, and we've even heard instances where the drug cost from the site is 2 to 3x the normal cost of the drug. The next real-life example that we'd like to share is also about access. This is a unique study because this was one that we were supporting on an ongoing basis for a number of years. We were supplying a couple thousand packs every quarter of a product called Ventolin. It was being used as a combination therapy as an inhaler. Well, COVID hit, and like many things during the time, you constantly heard due to COVID, which brings back flashbacks of last year at this time. Well, COVID hit, and Ventolin was being used to treat COVID patients or COVID positive patients. So manufacturers placed the product on restriction or allocation. So this meant that we could no longer source large supplies for use in a clinical trial. At this point, the sponsor needed roughly 2,000 units for 500 patients. Unfortunately, with no access, we could not secure. So the impact for the sponsor company and for the trial and the patients is that it put the whole trial in jeopardy of continuing. So those of you that are familiar with Ventolin, inhalers are a product that is basically sitting on the shelf at nearly every retail pharmacy. So using CTRX, we pivoted very quickly, implemented the card program so that patients could go to their local pharmacy to pick up the inhalers that they needed for the clinical trial. Being that we implemented this in 30 days, no patient missed a dose, and the study was able to continue. Tom, do you have any additional thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is a good one. Maybe just to add, when designing the CTRX service in the first place, we wouldn't have thought this would be a type of trial where it would have actually been utilized, readily available, inexpensive drug, typically covered by health insurance. So yeah, when COVID hit, it was a really great option to pivot to this and continues today. Maybe I'd also just mention, subsequently, this same sponsor, that was the first experience of a CTRX prescription process, but this same sponsor now also has 2 other trials, one in oncology and one in rare disease, that they are also utilizing the CTRX for that as well. So they realize the overall benefits and efficiencies. So moving into the third example of 4. So this one's related to cost savings. Andrew outlined earlier the benefits of supplying via prescription, and one of which was no overage or no waste associated with the commercial medications. So this project, a global phase 3 trial using Pembro in combination with sponsor's own IMP, 200 US patients, 25 US sites. And Keytruda is usually 8 cycles a month for a patient. The sponsor, in conjunction with their CMO, had planned for 30% overage. So to give you an idea, this is equivalent to around 1,500 vials or $6.5 million of drug, plus then the full GMP pack label release process and management process. So the solution that they went for was for them adopting a CTRX process. So no planning, no packaging, no overage, saving about $6.5 million right off the bat. Plus they're only then getting deferred financial payments, which finance obviously quite likes, as patients are enrolled on a monthly basis and so being invoiced on a monthly basis, and so that you don't have to have that initial large upfront payment prior to packaging, which is an additional benefit. And this type of scenario, high-value oncology product, is especially impactful for high-value drugs, relatively short expiry dates. I think Keytruda is around about 13, 14 months when Merck releases that for the US. So very large savings potential. Save one vial, save $5,000. Andrew, anything to add to this one before we move on?
Only just one point. With Pembro, and it's by far not the most expensive drug product that's out in the market. By no means is it cheap. It's roughly around $5,000 per vial. But we are starting to see therapies that are $10, $15, even $30,000 per dose for patients. As you start talking 10, 20, 30% waste, those overage or waste amounts can significantly start adding up into the tens and 20 millions of dollars very easily. And the next real life example that we like to say is also around cost savings. For this particular trial, the sponsor company was looking at conducting a phase 4 or a pragmatic or real world evidence study using their own commercially approved drug product. The solution that they wanted a direct-to-patient option for that. The solution that they were gravitating towards originally was to have it at a local depot and ship via specialty courier directly to the patients. With this program, there was a couple thousand patients that are enrolled for receiving monthly doses for over a 4-year period of time. The overall number of shipments that would have been required for this program was well over 100,000 shipments. Well, you can imagine the significant logistics costs and resources needed to manage that supply. With CTRX, we opened up a combination of a retail pharmacy network as well as shipping directly to patients from a central pharmacy. So patients were either allowed to run to the local pharmacy to pick up the medication that is needed, along with some of their other medications, or they were able to arrange have the product delivered through mail order directly to their door. The result of this particular trial is it saved the sponsor company or our client over $20 million in logistics charges, and it provided a very flexible options for the patients to receive their medications. So going back to the trends that Tom laid out, hopefully we have shown today that the CTRX program is an effective and efficient way to meet the demands of the current clinical trial trends. We've demonstrated that it's more patient-centric, that it is a mechanism to support decentralized trials and direct-to-patient. It is extremely effective at reducing costs and, more importantly, waste. It shortens development timelines significantly, and it is a way to gain access to commercial medications that have become tougher to source.
Finally then, just to highlight the perfect types of trials to consider a prescription-based supply model as opposed to source, pack and label. So as mentioned, any open label trial design requiring commercial medications plus any trial you'd want to get started very quickly. As Andrew mentioned, US arms starting in 30 days, Canadian arms a little bit longer. It's still very fast. Any drug that has limited distribution or REMS status, so tough to source products, either directly or with trial approval, and certainly helping out at a site level where, as Andrew mentioned, there can be significant extra charges that through reimbursement which may not have been realized. Any trial you would like to have a direct-to-patient shipment to support a decentralized trial, perfect trial for CTRX, or any trial with a high-value drug, especially if the expiry is relatively short-dated, is because then the waste reduction aspect becomes extremely impactful. So, with that, thank you very much again for taking the time to join us today. So I believe we can now move into questions. So yeah, if you have a question, please feel free to submit these now, and Andrew and I will attempt to answer. So thank you very much.
Thank you for a great presentation. Before we begin with the question and answer session, I want to remind our audience how to submit questions. You can submit them by typing them in the Q&A box, which is found on the right-hand side of the presentation window.
Thank you, Alyssa. So thanks everyone very much for submitting the questions as we've been going through this webcast today. So what we'll do now is, as mentioned, Andrew and I will look to go through these questions and address them as we go down. So first one I can see, are there any limitations regarding types of drugs? And actually I can see another one just below. Can CTRX be used for new investigational drugs? If not, is this planned? Is this possible to expand in the future? Okay, so I'll take this one. So quickly, limitations. No, there are no limitations for US and Canadian commercial drug products for the CTRX process. So as long as that product has an NDC number and it's being manufactured and supplied to patients, that is absolutely able to access those products for trials through the process. So there is no restriction at all. And in terms of the question on use for investigational drugs, IMP, so they would not be handled through the CTRX process, because that is purely a process of pharmacy dispensing of commercially approved medications. However, at Myonexx, as a full global clinical supplies company, we have the ability to, we handle IMP at our own facility, and so for IMP we would be handling that from our depots and delivering those directly to the patients from our own facility. Next question, we're going down. How is labeling managed? Andrew, do you want to have a go at this one?
Sure, Tom. That's actually a great question. So every pharmacy dispensing will have a regular prescription label that will have specific to that patient. So it'll have the patient name, it'll have the drug, the dosing, the prescribing doctor's information. If anything additional is needed, sometimes sponsors have requested, a protocol label or a cautionary statement on there. There's a number of different ways that we can handle that. A lot of it is dependent upon the drug that we'd be sourcing and the specialty pharmacy partners or central pharmacy partners that we'd be leveraging. We do have pharmacy partners that are able to apply an auxiliary label or an additional label to the along with the regular prescription label. So in those instances, we can accommodate, different labeling. In the U.S., it is important to note that, from a commercial drug standpoint or from even from a IMP standpoint, there is no specific labeling requirements of what needs to be on the commercial label. So that was a very good question. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. Well, there are lots of questions coming through here. Next, there's a couple here, Andrew, on returns and drug accountability. So can you manage returns from sites is here, and also drug accountability, reconciliation and returns. How does the study site manage the drug accountability and reconciliation in this program? Does the patient bring their drug back to the clinical site for compliance? And what does the site do with the drug? Andrew, do you want to have a go at this one also?
Yeah, sure, Tom. So from a returns, reconciliation, and destruction standpoint, there's a number of different ways that we could handle if it's referring to, direct-to-patient shipments. And it's really based upon, what your sponsor what your requirements are as a sponsor, and what what sort of costs would be associated with that. To date, a lot of them, if it's shipped directly to the patient and they're on a regular visit scheduled to the clinical site, typically what patients will do is bring the product back to the site. The site will do the reconciliation, accountability, and then arrange for destruction. If it is a full, decentralized trial, or, the patient isn't coming into the site on a regular routine basis, what Myonexx can do is arrange for specialty courier to collect the product from the patient, bring it back to our Myonexx depot, and then do the drug accountability, reconciliation, and destruction, arrange for destruction at that point.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. Looking down more of the questions here, and so we've got at least 10 people asking the question that we are asked multiple times a week when we're talking to our existing clients. when will you have this in Europe, or something along those lines in terms of having this service available outside of the US and Canada? So this is a great question. So as the European, I'll take this one. So the answer is yes, absolutely. This is something that Mynex has been working on for some time. We're investing significantly in our network for Europe. I'm really excited to launch this. It will be likely third quarter 2021. From a sponsor's perspective, it will be a very similar feel for what you see for the US and Canadian process. Obviously, on the back end, there are some significant differences. It's a challenging service to set up across multiple countries and jurisdictions, different regulatory requirements, but we're making really great progress, and yeah, very excited to launch this later this year. We can follow up specifically on how we are doing that on an individual basis with companies afterwards. Okay. Looking down some more questions. What do the sites think of this? Is this extra work for them? Andrew, you want to take this one?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question too, Tom. It's a question that we get quite regularly. So, as mentioned before in the presentation, the CTRX card or pharmacy benefit card component is newer to clinical trials, but it is not new to healthcare. I mean, this has been around for decades, essentially, if not longer. And so from a site's perspective, the feedback that we're getting from all the sites that we have trained to date is that it's very positive. They understand it, first and foremost. They know exactly how to enroll patients in it. The things that they like best is that, they don't have to wait to get source the product. They don't have to do any of that themselves. They don't have to wait to get reimbursed by the sponsor company. And it doesn't fall outside of their normal practices as far as processing, regular inpatient insurance. The nice thing is they don't have to do any sort of benefit investigation, prior authorization. None of that is applicable with the CTRX card. So it follows a similar process, but actually eliminates a lot of the workload that they would have.
Thanks. Yeah, sites really do like it. Okay, so next question we have here, we have a question on difficult to source drugs. So the question, Andrew, is around asking us how we're ensuring that these drugs are available at the pharmacy partners that we're using.
That is a great question, Tom. Part of our pharmacy network, we have over 60,000 retail pharmacies as well as 100 plus specialty pharmacies and central pharmacies. With the difficult to source drug products, I guess the important designation is just because they're difficult to source doesn't mean they're limited in availability or limited access. Typically, how from being in clinical supplies, we view difficult to source drug products as the ones that we cannot source through normal wholesale channels or, in bulk supply. A lot of these specialty drugs that are being used in clinical trials, either as a concomitant medication or core therapy, or in some instances head-to-head comparator, are what fall under the limited distribution or, may have a REMS designation. The reason why they have those designations is that patient information is required for those drug products, and oftentimes the drug manufacturers require patient information to be reported back to them on a regular basis. So just because they're difficult to source through normal wholesale channels doesn't mean they're necessarily hard to get through pharmacy dispensing. Most of these products are readily available on a routine basis from a pharmacy with a prescription. And what we will do is, if they are a little bit tougher or there might be some supply issues, we'll work with our pharmacy partners to make sure that they are well aware of what the forecast may be or what the projected enrollment is, so we can stay ahead of any supply demand that they may have.
Okay, thank you. Next question here, Andrew, we have, do you work with a network of central compounding pharmacies?
Quick answer on that, that's a very good question as well. Yes, part of our pharmacy network, there are central compounding pharmacies that can support clinical trials. It would be obviously based upon the prescription as well as, the timing of when the product needs to be to the patient. If it's a local central pharmacy that's close to the patients, that often works. But yes, short answer is we do have central compounding pharmacies within our network.
Okay, looking down at the next question. Question here, is there a portal to view card use and blinded prescription information?
I can take that one. Yeah, this is also a great question. The answer is yes, absolutely. So the portal that we have is like any other portal. It's accessible 24/7. The nice thing is we can set it up on a hierarchy level, meaning that you could have one or two super users that would have full access into all your claims data for all your trials, or you can assign access to a program manager or a clinical trial manager for only the trials that they're managing. In that portal is where we house all the claims data. So with the claims data, it has the member number, which is unique to that patient number. The group number that is captured is specifically to your clinical trial, and then it goes into the drug information, the quantity filled, the number of day supply, the product name and the NDC number, as well as the cost of the drug product and any dispensing fee that may be applicable. Then in addition to that, there is the dispensing pharmacy information and address, the prescribing doctor's name and NPI number, as well as the provider address or with the investigator where it's being sent through. So the portal and the reporting is all very comprehensive. They're all editable, filterable, and they're all void of patient health information, so there's no risk from that standpoint. But yeah, very comprehensive. Every one of our sponsors has full visibility into all claims, all dispensings that have been utilized through the CTRX card.
That's great. Last couple of questions now. I'm getting through these, Andrew. So, yeah, this next question is about site activation. So they're saying typically it is an internal requirement to have drug on site for the SIV prior to any enrollment. Is it possible to set up initial site seeding shipments in this program, i.e. not tied to a specific patient? In many study designs, there may not be enough time between screening and enrollment to await a shipment. That's an interesting question, Andrew. You want to give a response for this one?
Yes, that's actually a very insightful question, and it's one that we've gotten a number of times from clients. Fully recognize that in many instances you want to seed a site ahead of time with enough drug product to handle any sort of enrollment and dispensing right away. There are some drug products, and it is product specific, that we can do what's called a for-office use, and so we could have a quote-unquote, I don't want to use the word bulk supply, but we could have additional supply readily available that is not patient-specific. But that is 100% depending on the product. If it's falling under products, as we mentioned previously, with limited distribution or REMS designation, those need to be patient-specific. So that would really be dependent upon, what your screening period is with that particular patient. If they have from the time that they're enrolled in the study, of successful screening to when they're first dosed, typically all we need to have is 24 to 48 hours to have product available for them. But if it is something that you're screening and dosing same day, that may pose a challenge for this mechanism. While CTRX card works fantastic for many trials, there are some exceptions that it may not necessarily be the best fit, but it would be dependent upon what your site visit is, as well as basically the duration of time between when you enroll that patient to when you need to give them the first dose. But yeah, very good question. We can take a look at that in a number of different ways and hopefully find the solutions to be able to meet any study.
Okay, so I think we're running out of time now, so we maybe could just got time to squeeze in one more question. So this question is about billing and reimbursement. So how does the billing reimbursement interface with the sponsor?
Tom, I can take that one. That's a very good question. Actually, a very simple process. So MyoNext handles all the reimbursement for each individual pharmacy, and how we get notified of those claims are that on our CTRX card, there's some unique MyoNext identifying numbers. So any claim that is processed with those unique numbers get automatically routed to MyoNext. And then also a number on there is a group number, which is specifically related to a sponsor's clinical trial. So that's how we know that every claim that comes in, utilizing that unique PCN number and that group number, is specific to your trial. MyoNext promptly reimburses every pharmacy in our network that processes a claim. Then in return, MyoNext will provide one consolidated invoice for all the dispensings that happen that calendar month to the sponsor. It's a great way to minimize the number of invoices that you're receiving, and it's also a great way to defer costs. So as a sponsor, you're only paying for what has been dispensed that calendar month.
Okay, so thank you everyone so much for your time, for joining this webcast and for asking some really insightful questions. If there are any other questions you would like to know or understand any more, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be very happy to answer those on an individual basis. So thanks very much everyone for joining today, and we hope to hear from you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you both for answering these questions, and we want to thank our audience for attending and participating in today's event. I also want to thank our sponsor, MyoNext, for making today's educational webcast possible. We would like to ask everyone in the audience to participate in a brief survey, and you can see the survey to the right of your screen. You will receive an email alerting you when the webcast is available for replay. We invite you to forward that announcement to your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We will see you next time. Goodbye.